question. So we're doing special triangles. Okay, so we're looking at special triangles here. And by this, like I said, I mean we have two kinds, 30, 60, 90, and 45, 45, 90. And I'm going to do them separately today. Eventually they may be mixed together, but for now they're going to be separated. So we're going to start with the 30, 60, 90. So we're having a 30 degree, a 60 degree, and a 90 degree triangle. Now, like I said, what that means is that inside of your triangle, instead of it just being a right angle, we don't know anything else about it, it's telling you that inside of your triangle now, you have one angle that's 30 degrees, one angle that's 60 degrees, and now, of course, you have your right angle. So they're actually telling you what the angles are this time. Now, from this, you have to actually use certain formulas to find, of course, missing sides or different things. So you have two formulas that you've got to use. So I'm going to go ahead and give those to you, and then I'm going to explain what these are actually talking about. So write them down. Don't worry if you don't understand them at this moment. I'm going to explain what they're talking about. So, of course, we know that HYP is talking about the hypotenuse. We know that much. So it's telling us that the hypotenuse equals 2 times SL. Now I'm going to explain what SL is in just a minute. So the hypotenuse is going to equal 2 times SL. That's your first one. And the second one is LL equals SL times the square root of 3. So those are your two formulas we're fixing to use. So do not lose these anywhere. Put them in a box, put a star beside them, something, because those are the two that we're going to use over and over and over again for 30, 60, and 90. And we're going to use them in just a minute. Now, let's explain what some of these things mean. Now, if I have a right triangle, okay, yes. Oh, sorry. Yes. So if I have a right triangle, that means one of my angles is going to be 30 degrees, and I've got one that's 60. So we know across from our box, just like we did with Pythagorean theorem, that that is C, or our hypotenuse. Okay? That's where this HYP came in. So that's our hypotenuse. So across from that right angle is your hypotenuse. Now, corresponding with each angle is where these LL and SLs are coming from. If it's the 30-degree angle, since it is a small angle, okay, across from that small angle, okay, they are calling this side the short leg, which corresponds with the SL. You want one of the colored ones?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah. So they're telling you that if you find the 30-degree angle, you want another one just in case? Anybody else want one while I'm handing them out? Find the 30 degrees. The small angle is going to correspond to the small or the short side. And the same thing is going to happen with the bigger angle. So the 60-degree angle is going to correspond to the longer side. So, anybody else? So now I'm going to draw a line from the 60 down here to this side, because the 60 degree is going to correspond down here, and they're going to call that one the long leg, or it's going to be the SF. The LL. So down here is going to be the long leg, or the LL. So all you've got to do every time is find your two, know which one is which angle, and know that across from that is going to be either the long leg or the short leg. And of course, fill those two in, whatever those measurements are.
Which one do we do first? Like between.
Well, it's going to depend on what you got. So, are they going to give you the long leg? Because it's just like it was before. Sometimes they may give you the long leg. Sometimes they may give you the short leg. You're going to have to just look at each individual problem and go from there. So that's why we're going to do 2 or 3 of them and see. Okay? So, any questions at this point about where anything is coming from? So the 60 degree is going to correspond with the long leg, and the 30 degree is going to correspond with the short leg, and of course the 90 degree corresponds with the hypotenuse. Then all you've got to do is fill those into the formula, and let's go from there. So now let's actually do one and see what happens. So now we're going to do, I've got at least 3 examples here that we're going to do for 30, 60, 90. And we're going to see what happens. So on our first example, okay, it looks like this. So this is my 30 degree angle. This is my 60 degree angle. Now they may not always give you both measurements inside, but I did to start with. So now we know that this is 20. That's all we know at this point. So now we're going to label this. I'm going to call this A and this B. They will be called AB, they will be called XY, they will be called MN, they will be called all kinds of things. Your job is simply to find them. So, what I do every time is I'm going to write down both formulas. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over here to the side and I'm going to write down hypotenuse equals 2 times SL. And I'm going to draw a line and then I'm going to write LL equals SL times the square root of 3. So I'm going to go over here because I've got to find both. So I'm going to write both formulas down. Now I'm going to see what I can fill in. So if I've written down both of them, what is the only piece that was given to me in my problem? The hypotenuse. Here's my 90-degree angle. So the only piece across from that was given to me is the hypotenuse. Okay? So this is my hypotenuse. Straight across is my hypotenuse. So that was the only piece that was given to me. So which one of the two formulas is the only one that I can fill in right now? This first one. I don't know SL. I don't know LL. Only thing I do know is the hypotenuse. So I'm going to have to start with this formula. So go ahead and plug in what you do know. You know that this is 20. So you have 20 equals 2 times. Now, what is SL? What did we call it? It's the short leg, which in this case is labeled what? B. Our short leg is the one, remember, across from the 30-degree angle. So remember, this is our short leg. So it's going to be letter B. So here's our problem. So it's just like a regular equation. So if I cannot multiply these two, how am I going to solve it?
Divide 2.
I'm going to divide 2 on both sides. So you divide both sides by 2. So then B is going to be what? 10. So I know now that the short leg is now 10. So I now know that this side over here is 10. So I now know the hypotenuse and I now know the short leg. Now all I need to do is I need to find the long leg. This is my long leg. So, what do I need to do over here now to my second formula?
Plug 10 into the SL.
Okay, remember 10 is now your short leg. So now this needs to be plugged in over here. So my long leg is what letter? A. So now I have letter A equal to 10 times the square root of 3. So a lot of it's just going to be plugging things in. Now, how do you multiply a whole number and a square root? Because that's what we're doing right here. We're multiplying together a whole number and a square root. How do you multiply those two together?
You have to do 10 times 3 and square root of
Just stick them together.
13.
Nope. You can't put it under the square root. You just stick them together. This stays on the outside, that stays on the inside. So it just becomes A equals
10. Oh.
like this. That kind of gets suctioned together. It's kind of like 10 is over here, square root is here. They're kind of getting drawn together. They don't get pulled. The 10 doesn't get pulled under the square root. The 3 doesn't get pulled outside. They just get pulled together and they stay exactly the way they are. 10 stays on the outside and the 3 stays on the inside.
So it just stays like that.
It just stays just like that.
That's cool.
And that is called 10
I'm talking about,
on the square root
Oh, 10 on the square root of 3.
of 3. That's the way you read it. 10 on the square root of 3. So if you have one whole number and one square root, just kind of bring them together and leave them. Don't put them together. Don't do 10 times 3. Just bring them together. Okay? Does that make sense? You're basically just erasing this multiplying thing and bringing them right next to each other. So you got your two answers now. You got A and you've got B and you're done. So any questions? So in a minute we may have to start over here with the long leg and the short leg. We don't always have to start over here with a hypotenuse. It just depends on what kind of a problem they give you. So a lot of this is just plugging in and solving. So are you ready to try another one?
nope.
No, this is not hard. Okay, now we're going to actually do one off of the worksheet that I've got you. We're going to do number, if I can figure out which one I wrote down. I believe it's number 11. Yes, we're doing number 11. I'm skipping around on a lot of these. I gotta figure out where my problem is. So we're doing this one. I can move all my mess out of the way. Okay, so we're doing this one right here. So go ahead and copy this one down on your piece of paper. Now, I told you before that they will not always give you both angles on the inside, but you should be smart enough to know which one is the one missing. Because they've given you the box, they've given you the 60, so the only one that's missing is the 30. So now, once you copy it, you can go ahead and label your sides. Hypotenuse, short leg, long leg, so that we can get ready to fill this in to our formula.
Since we know where 30 is, can we just put it right
Yes, you can fill it in on yours, but that doesn't mean that they are going to fill it in on theirs. So you are more than welcome on yours when you copy it to go ahead and fill in the 30.
You want us to write out columns like you just did, like HYP?
Yes. So if you go ahead and fill it in, go ahead and write your two problems, because that's what I'm going to do in just a minute. It makes your life a lot easier if you get in the habit of writing the two problems every time, because you're going to have to solve two of them every time. And as you notice this time, they've labeled them X and Y. Like I said, they are going to change every single time. One time it may be A and B like I did, the next time it may be X and Y, the next time it may be M and N. Could be any letter. Okay, so has everybody got this written down? So I can go ahead and start writing on here. Okay, so we know which side is which.
Y is short.
Okay, so Y, we know that this should be our 30. They didn't put it in there, but we know it should be there. So that makes Y the short leg. What else do we know?
X is long.
X is going to be the long leg. And that leaves 2 on the square root of 3 to be the hypotenuse. Okay, so that's what we should already know. Those should be our three sides. So now all we have to do is fill that into our two problems. Now, out of the three pieces that we've got here, which form are we going to be able to fill in first?
The hypotenuse.
The hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is the only one that has numbers. Long leg doesn't have numbers, it has an X. Short leg doesn't have any numbers, it has a Y. So the only one I can fill in right now is going to be my hypotenuse. So I'm going to have to start with the hypotenuse problem and work that one out first. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to start writing my two problems. So I've got hypotenuse equals 2 times my short leg, and then of course I've got my long leg equals the short leg times the square root of 3. So we're going to start here first. So what did we find out the hypotenuse was?
2
2 on the square root of 3. That equaled 2 times, what was my short leg? Which letter was it?
Y.
My short leg was Y. So I filled in my two pieces. My hypotenuse was 2 on the square root of 3. My short leg was the letter Y. So now, one more time. If I cannot multiply them, I divide. So I'm going to go in here and divide both sides by 2. So I know I have 1. Now the question here is, what do I do with this side?
Is it gonna be 4 on the square root of 2?
Okay, now you're dividing.
1 on the square.
0.
Can you just multiply?
Just the
reverse
square
it?
root of 3.
Can you reverse it again?
Why would I reverse it? If I reversed it, we'd go back to the way it was.
It's just the square root of 3.
Now, both of these are whole numbers. This is the square root of 3. What do I do with regular whole numbers?
They cancel each other?
2 divided by 2 is 1. They cancel each other out. Anything that's regular whole numbers, you treat them the way that they've always been treated. You can't touch this. But you can touch these two because they are both whole numbers. You got to remember this. Just because this is beside this doesn't mean that this is not a whole number. This is the whole number. It's on the outside. Whole number divided by whole number, just as usual. So 2 divided by 2, they cancel each other out. So what is the only thing I'm left with? Square root of 3. So as long as it's on the outside, it's still a whole number. Okay? So a lot of y'all are going to have to get used to working with these square roots. Something that you're not used to working with. You can fill them in, that's the easy part. Square roots are a different story. Okay, does that part make sense? Okay, so they are both whole numbers. So 2 divided by 2 makes 1. I can cancel them out, they disappear. All I've got left is the square root. So now, I can take this. This is my short leg now, remember? So now I can take it and fill it into the next one. So now I can take this square root of 3 and fill it in for my next one. So when I fill it in over here, my long leg is what? X. So now it says X equals square root of 3 times square root of 3. Now here's another new one you got to remember. If they are both square roots, what are we going to do with them?
Keep them the same.
They get put under the same square root. They get to join together.
So is it 30?
Oh, it'll be the square root of 9.
Okay, so they get to come together.
Is it 30?
No, it'll be 3.
They come together into the same square root. So now you have
So we're supposed to multiply?
3.
You just said we was going to
times 3 in the same square root.
See, yeah, I just said multiply.
Well, see, I didn't actually multiply. I said they come together in the same square root.
So where does 9 come from?
Okay, hang on. Hang on.
I'm confused.
All I said, hey, listen to me. Just listen to me. All I said was bring them in the same square root. Okay? Don't keep trying to get ahead of me. Okay, is everybody with me? All I did was bring them in the same square root. Now, we can do this 2 ways. I prefer to do this the easy way, where some people make you multiply these out. But if I end up with a number that's not a perfect square, I'm going to end up with a problem. Because first of all, what's a perfect square? Do you even know what that is?
Where the exponent is.
Okay. First of all, your perfect squares are your numbers like 9, 16, 25. Because if you put 9, 16, 25, 36, all that in your calculator and hit the square root button, what are you going to get? You're going to get a whole number. But what happens if what I get under here is not 9, 16, 25, 36? I'm going to get a decimal. And I don't want that. I don't want a decimal. So, I prefer not to go that route. My job and what I teach is the fact that if these two are the same, okay, if you got 2 of the same number, okay, which is what we've got, if I've got 2 of the same number under the square root, then what happens is they come out from under the square root, and it's that number. Okay? Because what does square root mean? It means you gotta have 2 of the same number. Square means 2. So square root means if I have 2 of the same number under the square root, my answer is that number. So if I have a pair, 2, of the same number, my answer is that number. It's not 9, it's whatever that number is under the square root. And what number was under the square root? 3. So I have a pair, I have 2 of the same number, so I pull it out. Here's what I usually do. Of course, I usually have to practice this for about 3 days before anybody gets this. Every time I circle, if I circle a group of 2, one circle means one number comes out. So if I have one circle here, then one of those comes out. You're not pulling both of those numbers out. You're only pulling one of those 3s out. Okay? And we're going to run into some more of this later, and it's going to be a big problem. Because if I have the square root of 27, we're going to have a major problem because 27 is not a perfect square.
I thought you multiplied the 3 times 3 and take the square root of 9.
That's fine because 9's a perfect square. But what do you do, like I said, if it's not a perfect square? Because, for example, if I gave you the square root of 27, 27's not a perfect square.
No.
You're going to get a decimal. We don't want a decimal. So that's where you've got 3 3s. So that means you pull out one group and you got one left.
Okay.
So that's why if you do it this way, you don't have any decimals. You can do it with whole numbers of 9, 16, 25. You can do it that way, and you can do it with anything that is not going to be a whole number. It works for both. Whereas if you try to put everything in the calculator, it's not going to work. Because what do you do with a decimal? You don't know what to do with anything that comes out to be a decimal. But this way works with every number. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what I may have to do is give y'all some of these to work with and just try breaking them down tonight, along with some of these other ones. And I didn't say I'm gonna give you 120, but you're gonna have to make sure you can break some of these down. Because some of this is gonna create a problem if you can't break down and know what to pull out. Because again, some of this should have been taught last year. Jacoby, pull your mask up, please. You forgot. And I mean, that's one of the problems we have in the spring. A lot of things got missed and got left out because it's hard to teach virtually or to teach through a video all of this mess right here. So a lot of that got bypassed in the spring. And so some of us don't know that. So that's something that we're gonna have to work on. And we may have to do some more tomorrow or something and make sure that we've got some of this. Okay? But the easiest thing is if you've got two of the same number, just write that number here. That's all you're doing. Don't multiply them, don't do anything, just write it down. So if there's 2 4s, write a 4. If there's 2 5s, write a 5. That's all you're doing.
So if we ever, so for the homework that you give us today, there won't be a problem with the two numbers in the scroll are not the same?
I do not think so.
Okay.
They should be exactly the same on most of these.
So if they're not the same, that means we did something wrong, right?
I don't think you would even have one of those.
Okay.
Because there shouldn't be one where you would come out with one in the first part to plug into the second part. I don't think you should even have one of those.
Okay.
Okay, let's try another one. Let's try number 18 on my sheets. If I can find number 18. So copy this one right here, number 18. So you got this one. So you're looking at this one right here only. So make sure you're copying number 18, not number 16 up there.
Oh.
Here, let me do that. Now, maybe that will help. You're only copying that one right there, hopefully, that you see. Okay, has everybody got that one copied? Make sure when you copy it, you go ahead and write down your two formulas. If we don't get to the 45, 45, 90, then we'll get to it tomorrow. Okay. So on this one again, what sides are what?
B is the short.
Okay, so we know that the missing piece is 30, so that makes B the short leg. What else?
And A is the hypotenuse.
A is going to be your hypotenuse this time. So then that leaves 5 on the square root of 3 to be my
Long leg.
long leg. So, all I gotta do is fill this information into my two formulas. So I'm gonna move this now that we've got everything labeled. So I've got my hypotenuse equals 2 times SL. And I've got my LL equals SL times the square root of 3. So, according to my problem, which piece do I need to fill in first?
The second one.
The LL, because they gave me the long leg. They didn't give me the hypotenuse or the short leg, they gave me the long leg this time. So I'm going to put the 5 on the square root of 3 in for the long leg. Short leg is now labeled what? B. And of course my square root of 3 stays. So one more time, if I can't multiply, I divide. So I can't multiply these two, a b and a square root of 3. So I divide both sides by the square root of 3. So now, just like before, if they were both whole numbers, I could divide. Well, if they are both the same square root, I can also divide. So since both of these are the square root of 3, what's going to happen to the square roots of 3?
They're gonna cancel.
They're going to cancel each other out. So, square root of 3, square root of 3, they're both gone. So, what am I left with?
5 equals B.
I'm just going to be left with b equals 5, 5 equals b, however it's written. So, as long as they are both whole numbers, or they are both the same square root, I can cancel them out. Now, I can't cancel out a square root of 3 and a square root of 2, but if they are both the same square root, they can cancel each other out. Okay? So all I'm left with is the 5. Now, take that and plug it back in. So B was my short leg. That's my short leg. So plug it back in. So now I have the hypotenuse equal to 2 times 5.
Would you put A for the hypotenuse, or would you just put A for
So my hypotenuse was labeled what? I've moved my page.
A.
A? Yes. So it should be A equals 10. So I have not two answers. So sometimes they come out to be whole numbers. There's nothing wrong with it. So any questions? Okay. I do not have time to do 45, 45, 90 because 45, 45, 90 has a completely different set of formulas. Actually, I think it only has one formula. So wherever my paper is hiding. There it is. You actually had 10 problems total on these with everything. So I'm going to go ahead and just give you these 5. And let you go ahead and get started. Now this is going to start with number 6. On here, on my worksheet. Because 1 through 5 is the 45, 45, 90. So you're actually starting here with number 6. So go ahead and start with number 6 right here. This is your homework.